Happy New Year! Now that we're in 2021, I thought I would make a video about journaling because a lot of us have turned to journaling or maybe want to turn to journaling during this time of the COVID pandemic. And we have a lot of thoughts and feelings and often find we have a lot more time at home. So I thought I would show you the journals that I'm keeping at this time and the hows and the whys of why I keep these journals to maybe inspire you to start a new journal or just to continue journaling. Hi, welcome to Gently Being. So I thought for this video I would come over to my little desk, and this is where I do all my journaling and just share some of the books and journals that I'm keeping at this time. So first up, I've shared some videos about this before, but I'm just filling up my commonplace book. I'm kind of close to finish to this one, so I'll be starting a new one soon. And I may be making a new video about more ideas for how and why to start a commonplace book. But just to go over again, a commonplace book is where you keep quotes that have really spoken to you from books or articles or poems that you've read. And it's just this beautiful collection of the wisdom that you've come across. Right now, as I mentioned in the previous video I made, I'm sort of following my own little monastic schedule for January, and this is just putting a lot more structure onto my days with more periods for prayer and meditation throughout the day, and I'm seeing how this goes for the month. But part of that is that I have journaling scheduled in to my day every day, and it takes place in the morning after I do my morning meditation. And the very first thing I do after the morning meditation right now is I read a couple poems from Rilke, by Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke. And as you can see, I have some that I've marked, but if something really strikes me, a line or a whole poem, I then quickly take the time to put it into my commonplace notebook. And I have been finding that Rainer Maria Rilke is just such a beautiful poet and so much knowledge in it that I often will make some time to put some of the beautiful words and wisdom of Rilke into my commonplace book. Next up, I have a book that is specifically my gardening journal. I am attempting to create a very tiny nature sanctuary space. And so during the year, this is my old journal that was for it. I thought it was really perfect because of the beautiful flowers. But this is specifically sharing the ideas I have for the space, writing down what's been planted, writing some thoughts on what's happened on the space and the land. And this is really great if you do any sort of gardening, even just container gardening. It helps you look back and see, how the seeds, how the plants responded to their environment, what you've learned, what you can do better, what you might change. And it's also just a really good place for dreaming about what you want to do with the plants in your life. And it's kind of interesting because at the back of this one I noticed that it also was a bit of a commonplace book for me in the very back as well, because where I go for the planting, it's totally off-grid. So I would also write down quotes and things that I'd read while I was there. And I've started a new one because I filled this one up. And this, I mostly, I use it when I'm, doing the work on the flowers, on the plants, on my observations of it. But, oftentimes it also, I filter in how I'm feeling about things. But I really enjoy keeping the gardening work in their own journals because it's really useful to turn back to when I'm just looking for that information. And I also tend to keep lists of ideas, lists of, seeds I've seen, lists of plants I'd like to try, lists of things that didn't work. So, another way of keeping a journal, you don't have to write long sentences and, be poetic and have a novel of a journal. You can even just keep it to have the lists that are very useful for you. Next up, this is a little journal that I started during Advent because my mom and I decided that we would both keep journals during the length of Advent and then we would trade them. But due to the COVID pandemic and our area going into lockdown, we weren't actually able to spend Christmas together. But we found that we were both really enjoying just keeping this little journal, that we're continuing to do it to trade later on. And this is a really great way to journal if you want to have, make it a buddy thing, something to share with someone. And it, kind of sometimes forces you to do it when you might not think so. So even when you feel like you don't want to or you don't have anything to say, you'll pick it up because you know that someone else is filling out their journal and that you want to share something with them. This one I do in the morning, and oftentimes I'm still a little tired and cotton-headed, so I just sort of reflect on the previous day a little bit. And if you do this sort of joint journal system, it can be a good idea to just lay out what sort of things you're going to share. And right now this is really sort of reflecting on the previous day when I write it in the morning. After that, I have this little notebook that I'm using to write down what I'm using for passage meditation. So specifically, I try to use one thing a month right now because for me, that's just the capacity I have. But I'm making a record of what I'm using for my passage meditation. So for instance, I've used the St. Francis of Assisi prayer, and I have that written at the front. And then as I add, I'm just writing in those passage meditation texts so that I have a record of them all together and I don't have to go searching for it, because maybe I'll sort of forget the words, or I'll want to maybe move on to another one, and then I have them all here. And when I do the passage meditation, I'm able to just keep this notebook with me so I know what to look to if I'm stumbling on the words. Or I also find that when I'm trying to learn something for passage meditation, for me, it helps to slowly write it out because it just helps it stay in my mind. So after that, I have, and I keep it in sort of this nice little protective case so that I can travel with it easy. And so I just sort of open it up and you can keep all kinds of supplies for journaling in here. But this is my spiritual journal, and this one is where I really reflect on the practices I'm doing and how I'm relating to my spiritual life and my spirituality, and just sometimes it features a lot of doubts that you're having, or this one can be, I think, the most personal because it's really some deep reflection will take place. But because of that, it's also not a book that I write in every day. It's just when I'm really thinking about it or have questions, or I just feel like there's something I need to really get into that has to do with the spiritual life and my practices. I keep this book specifically as my spiritual life journal, and I think it can be really great because it allows you to express things that you may be keeping like really deep down inside you, but also it can help you see the spiritual path that you're on and changes and developments that have happened in your life. Just put him back in his little case. And lastly, I have this notebook that I just think is so beautiful. And so this notebook is specifically for herbal recipes and recipes of all natural products. So for instance, I have a recipe for an all natural household cleaner, and some ideas for herb infused oils. And this is one that's like very slowly being kept because I only put things in it when I really think they are top-notch and worth saving. So in some ways it's connected to the gardening journal because it's very much about how to use some of the things that are and will be grown in the gardening space. So I just really like to keep that all together. And again, I just thought this notebook was so beautiful that I wanted to put something special in it. So that was a little glimpse of me sharing the different journals that I keep. I guess I might be a little bit of an addict at it. I more find that the way that I think and the way that I look back on things, I like to have some sort of categorization to it. So that's why I keep the gardening one separate from, let's say, the spiritual journal. And of course, at times there may be overlaps on things, and I always date everything. So if I ever really wanted to look at the totality of what was going on, I'm able to look at, you know, what was happening around that time with the spiritual journal and the gardening journal, and how did they impact each other if I wanted to do that. But I hope that this just gives you some inspiration that you can keep a journal for all types of things in your life, or different commonplace books for all kinds of different things in your life as well. And there's no rules, and you don't have to write something really long if that's not what works for you. It can just be a place of sharing lists for yourself. And also, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's written. Perhaps speaking works better for you, and you can record your thoughts. Make a recording of your journal, you know, into a recording device, or your phone, or your camera, if that works. A lot of times it helps us just work through what we may be keeping kind of buried. And at this time when there can be a lot of anxiety and still so much unknown of what's happening with the pandemic and everything, I think that journaling can be something that's really useful for helping deal with our emotions at this time and our spiritual life. So thanks so much for tuning in to Gently Being. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe down below and hit the bell so you always know when there is a new video. And I'll be back again on Sunday with an all new episode of Gently Being. Thanks again.